Good day, everyone! I am Josephine Espirito,
I'm Sofemi P. Chongsan.
and we will discuss the American period. So here's our content. First, the brief overview of American period.
Second, the events during American period.
Third, famous authors and writers.
The fourth one is the contribution of America to the Philippines.
And of course, the conclusion later on. So let's now proceed to the brief overview. So let's now proceed to the brief overview of the American period. So first is the American settlement in the Philippines began in 1898 after the Spanish-American War. So the United States acquired the Philippines from Spain through the Treaty of Paris in 1898 rather, initiating American presence and the influence in the region. So gikuha din dito sa mga American no, sa mga Spanish through the Treaty of Paris in 1898, which is i-discuss na later on sa lang Treaty of Paris sa events na siya. So, next is the establishment of institutions. So, because of the American, daghan na jud mga establishment, mga institution nga na build diri sa atong country which is the Philippines kay pagdung nila diri hunahuna nila kay need og mga infrastructure or institution nga kabutangan diri sa Philippines para ra pod sa mga Filipinos. Next is introduction of English. Of course, we all know nga Americans are known for English speakers. But gila po nang gi-share diri pag-colonize nila, which is kanang makita na pud sa karon nga mga generation nga kita we are influenced by them, so nag-English speaking na pud ta. The next is same na American settlement nga began in 1898 after the Spanish-American War. So the colonization period is from 1898 to 1946. So pila to ka years guys kamo na kwenta kay dili man na makwenta na mo. Makwenta pero di bulok maligmat. So ana nga mga panahon nagkuan di ay ana nga mga panahon kita kay gi-colonize ta sa American, which until we gain the independence. So kita kay independent naman ang country ron tungod jud pud na sa American. This period of colonization shaped the socio-political landscape of the country and influenced its development trajectory. So dito ka maka-deny jud nga sa tinuod jud nga ang American kay very have a big impact sa ato ang Philippines, sa atong country. So next is the American influence and changes. So American influence brought about significant changes, including the establishment of institutions such as educational and governmental structures. English became the primary medium of instruction, and various reforms were implemented in the government, education, infrastructure to modernize the country. So daghan jud sila na butang diri sa Pilipinas nga gikan ra pud sa ilang country gibutang nila diri aron kita tanan kay ma-modernize pod. Then the resistance and conflict. So, bisan pagdagan sila na butang diri sa Philippines, digan sila kanang impact diri sa Philippines, di pud malikayan ang mga conflict no. So, Filipino nationalists resisted American rule, leading to the Philippine-American War. So, kay mga boss kinsa pay ganahan nga mapasakop. So kita mga Pilipino mulaban ito kinsay mulong sa atong Pilipinas, sa atong country. So naitabo nga Philippine-American War in the year 1899 to 1902, and these conflicts were marked by fierce resistance against foreign occupation and attempts to preserve Filipino sovereignty. And lastly, the lasting impact. So, di jud po nato i-deny sa tinuod nga dako kayog impact ang American diri sa Philippines, which is despite of the challenges and conflicts, American influence left a lasting impact on the Filipino society, politics, and culture. So, mga culture, sa pag-govern sa nasod, na influence po na gikan po na sa mga American. The elements of American governance, language, and cultural practices persist in the Philippines today, shaping its identity as a nation. And that's it for the brief overview of the American period.
Now, let's move on to the second content, which is the events during the American period. The first one is the Treaty of Paris, 1898. The end of the Spanish-American War, the Treaty of Paris 1898 was a peace treaty signed on December 10, 1898 by Spain and the United States that ended the Spanish-American War. The terms of the treaty also ended the age of Spanish imperialism and establish the United States as a world power. The Treaty of Paris, signed on December 10, 1898. That is the key takeaways. Under the treaty, Cuba gained independence from Spain, and the United States gained possession of the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Guam. Marking the end of Spanish imperialism, the treaty established the United States' position as a world power. The second event is the First Battle of the Spanish-American War. It was fought on May 1, 1898 in Manila Bay, where U.S. naval forces defeated the Spanish Armada defending the Philippines. Next, we have the negotiations in Paris. Peace negotiations between representatives of the United States and Spain began in Paris on October 1, 1898. Spain reluctantly agreed to sell Philippines to the US for $20 million. Spain also agreed to pay back the $400 million Cuban debt by transferring possession of Puerto Rico and the Mariana Island of Guam to the United States. And to discuss with is the establishment of the colonial rule. Here, Spain ceded its long-standing colony of the Philippines to the United States in the Treaty of Paris on February 4, 1899. Just 2 days before the U.S. Senate ratified the treaty, fighting broke between American forces and Filipino nationalists led by Emilio Aguinaldo, who sought independence rather than a change in colonial rules. So, on December 10, 1898 to October 31, 1899, this is the crisis faced during that time. The United States government formally acquired the Philippines from Spain with the signing of the Treaty of Paris on December 10, 1898. The U.S. government declared military rule in the Philippines on December 21, 1898. Emilio Aguinaldo, a Filipino nationalist, proclaimed the independence of the Philippines on January 5, 1899. Emilio Aguinaldo established a rebel government, so the U.S. government troops and Filipinos clashed in Manila on February 4, 1899. The U.S. government troops took control of Hulu on the island of Sulu on May 18, 1899. The third event is the Philippine-American War. The Philippine-American War, known alternatively as the Philippine Insurrection, Filipino-American War, or Tagalog Insurgency, was fought between the First Philippine Republic and the United States from February 4, 1899 until July 2, 1902. So this period actually began after Aguinaldo returned to the Philippines from Hong Kong on May 19, 1898. On board an American cutter from the fleet of Admiral George Dewey, who on May 1, 1898 had defeated the Spanish forces in the Battle of Manila Bay. Tensions arose after the United States annexed the Philippines under the Treaty of Paris at the conclusion of the Spanish-American War rather than acknowledging the Philippines' declaration of independence. The war can be seen as a continuation of the Philippine struggle for independence that began in 1896 with the Philippine Revolution against Spanish rule. It lasted 3 years and resulted in the death of over 4,200 American and over 20,000 Filipino combatants. As many as 200,000 Filipino civilians died from violence and disease.
So let's now proceed to the fourth events during the colonization of the American here in the Philippines. So we have the implementation of the Philippine Organic Act of 1902, which is also known as the Philippine Bill of 1902 and the Cooper Act, after its author Henry Allen Cooper. It was a basic law that was enacted by the American government in the Philippines on July 1, 1902. So this bill was proposed the creation of the administration of a civil government in the Philippines. President Theodore Roosevelt signed it into the law in July 2, 1902. This is the approval of the act coincided with the official end of the Philippine-American War. So kani siya nga act guys kay gi-signan is a president of the United States which is Theodore Roosevelt of aning July 1, 1902 which is gi-declare na ko dito nga nag-end na ang Philippine-American War. So let's go deeper on the author of this act, which is Henry Allen Cooper. So he was born on September 8, 1850, a lawyer and a member of the U.S. Congress representing the 1st District of Wisconsin. He studied at Northwestern University for his law degrees before eventually being admitted to the bar in Chicago. So makainon ta very bright siya. Dili na po tayo makatinga guys, nakagama siya kaya nag-study siya law sa Northwestern University before ni proceed sa bar of Chicago. So as a politician, he was known for drafting the Philippine Organic Act, which became the basic law of the colonial government in the Philippines. So aning act makaingon ta nga authoritative. Why? Because this account and sources are authoritative because of the primary author of the Philippine Organic Act. He also has the direct contact within it and a first-hand account to the topic. So kaibaw si Henry ani. So muna makaingon tang authoritative kay siya jud mismo ang nagsuwat aning act. So biased or not, the account and source is reliable since it was primarily authored by Henry Cooper himself. So it is not biased because he is not anti-Filipino and he has contributed many things in the Philippines, and that what makes him not biased. So in conclusion, overall, Philippine Organic Act 1902 functioned as the basic law for the Filipino rights such as participation in the government, deemed in the Constitution for the colony, the law provided by a legislative body known as the Philippine Assembly, which was to be occupied by elected Filipino state. So that was all for the implementation of the Philippine Organic Act of 1902. So next event during the American period is the education reforms and the introduction of public school system. So education became a very important issue for the United States colonial government since it allowed it to spread their cultural values, particularly the English language, to the Filipino people. So sa pagdo sa mga American diri kanang nakaingon sila nga wala jay kanang mga public school system diri sa Philippines. So sila mismo ang naghatag og education, nag-provide sa education diri sa atuang country. So on March 10, 1901, with the Philippine-American War drawing to a conclusion, Elwell S. Otis as military governor created the Department of Public Instruction in English language and the American history. Education was expected to lead to forming of a national identity and a Filipino nationalism. So, makaingon jud punta nga through education, makabaw punta sa atong identity and makakuan punta sa spirit of nationalism. And on January 20, 1901, the Act number 74 formalized the creation of the department. So during the American period in the Philippines, education underwent significant reforms. One notable reforms was the establishment of the public school system, So here are the key features which is included. So first is the Thomasites and English as the medium of instruction. So kaning Thomasites, these are the American teachers who were sent to the Philippines to serve as educators. Since wala pa may mga teachers diri sa panahon nila, pag-abot nila kay wala pa ganing education, so wala pa dyan teachers. So gidala sa taga United States ang mga Thomasites para mo teach diri sa Philippines. And also the English as the medium of instruction, which is sila dyan ang nag-provide na to kanang insights about the English language, which is the primary medium of instruction, aiming to align the educational system of with the American. So we all know America good sila, so mga English speaking sila, so ang ilang mga country, ang ilang inistoryahan gibutang na diri sa Pilipinas. So second is the secularization of education. The American administration sought to separate church and the state influence in education, moving towards a secular system. This shift aimed to create a more inclusive and diverse educational environment. So third, the introduction of Western curriculum. The curriculum was revised to incorporate Western subjects, emphasizing science, mathematics, and English literature. This aimed to modernize and align Philippine education with the American standards. So, makaingon jud ta nga ang American may gadala sa mathematics, English, og science diri sa ato ang country, which is the Philippines. Next is the focus on practical skills. So there was an emphasis on practical skills and vocational education to meet the needs of the developing economy. So, di na po into academic lang din sila mismo, like English, math, science. Nagpuan po sila og mga vocational education nga practical lang mga hunahuna, like para makatabang po sa economy sa Philippines, kay hinay pa itong economy at itong mga times kay since wala pa, digit pa ta kayo dependent. Next is the expansion of educational opportunities. So, efforts were made to extend education to a broader population. Public schools were established, providing access to education for Filipinos across different socio-economic backgrounds. So, nag-provide sila public schools para maka-eskwela po ng mga Filipinos, which is very impactful po diri sa atong bansa kay tungod sa mga American na tayo school hangtod karon tungod jud og gyapon nila. And lastly, the standardization of education. The American administration implemented policies to standardize education across the archipelago, promoting education uniform system to enhance national cohesion. So, dahil sila standard ang mga American hangtod karon murag na-apply lagi pa nato. Pero na sila standard nga murag kailangan i-meet nato kay parang ang mga Pinoy, mga bright sila nga modako. So the impact of the American to the education is very like dako jud siya nga one hangtod karon kay tungod jud na sa American nga sila ang nagsugod ana. So that's it for the education reforms and introduction of public school systems.
The sixth event, we have the economic policies and exploitation of Philippine resources. The first one, we have land ownership. The Land Registration Act of 1902 shifted land from Filipino farmers to wealthy American landlords, marginalizing peasants. So, ani nga time ang mga kayutaan sa mga Filipino farmers kay i-shift sa padung sa mga wealthy American landlords. So, if you want to read more about the land ownership in the Philippines during American period, we have the Land Ownership in the Philippines by Renato Constantino. The second one, we have Philippine Society and Revolution by Amado Guerrero. The second economic policy or Philippine exploitation of Philippine resources is the resource extraction. American corporations exploited Philippine resources without regard for the environment or local welfare, causing ecological damage and social unrest. One of the books related to this is, first we have Benevolent Assimilation, the American Conquest of the Philippines, 1899 to 1903 by Stuart Creighton Miller. The second one, we have Colonial Pathologies, American Tropical Medicine, Race, and Hygiene in the Philippines by Warwick Anderson. The third economic policy or exploitation of Philippine resources, we have export. or export-oriented agriculture. So under American rule, the Philippines focused on exporting cash crops, neglecting subsistence farming, and becoming economically vulnerable. One of the books are the first one, we have Agricultural Transformation and Land Conversion in the Philippines by Florencia G. Pales. The second book is The American Colonial State in the Philippines, Global Perspectives, that was edited by Julian Go and Anne L. Foster. The fourth one, we have Labor Exploitation. The American colonial government pushed Filipino labor migration to the U.S. and its territories, resulting in exploitative conditions, low pay, and racial discrimination. One of those books are, first one, we have Benevolent Assimilation, The American Conquest of the Philippines, 1899 to 1903 by Stuart Crichton Miller. The second one, we have The Labor Trade in the Western Pacific, 1897 to 1914 by Caroline M. Goldstein. Moving on to the fifth, we have the infrastructure development. American colonial infrastructure development prioritized facilitating resource extraction and export for American benefit. So overall, the economic policies of the American colonial, the books are, the first book is The American Colonialism and the Philippines, a history of entanglement of and empowerment by Julian Go. The second book, we have Empires, Nations, and Families, a history of the North American West, 1800s to 1860 by Anne F. Hyde. There are napagay point. We have social cultural changes and Americanization of Philippine society. We have language influence.
Go.
And now to the last event of American period, or during the American period. We have social cultural changes and Americanization of Filipino society. Language influence. English was the language that the Americans introduced to the Filipinos. Educational system. The American education was introduced, shaping the formal education structure. Legal and political systems. The American colonial administration introduced democratic principles, shaping the legal and political systems. Then we have infrastructure development. American colonial authorities initiated various infrastructure projects. Then the last one, we have religious influence. The American agreement is the policy of separation of the church and state. I want to delve into the meaning of social-cultural. To those who don't know, social-cultural refers to the intersection of social and cultural factors influencing behavior and beliefs within a society.
So, muna mo sa brief overview sa events during the American period. So, mag-move on na sa itong mga crush guys. Charot, ikaw. Let's now move on to the next, which is the famous authors and writers during the American period. So, mag-ilang taon ni Manuel Ardelia, which is his famous literary piece is How My Brother Leon Brought Home a Wife. So, in this famous literary piece of him is a short story which set in the Philippines during the American colonial period. So it explores cultural differences and societal expectations as Leon introduces his city-bred wife, Maria, to his rural hometown. So, ani nga literary piece kay ma-reflect put ni sa clash between the urban and the rural lifestyle. Unsay kinabuhi sa taga-bukid o taga-city. So, i-emphasize ko diri ang importance of understanding and acceptance sa relationships. Next is Nick Joaquin. So his famous literary piece is The Mass of Saint Sylvester, which is a short story again that takes place during the time when the Americans were here in the Philippines. So it talks about the culture mix, including Spanish and American influences along with local traditions. So ang mga cultures and traditions sa Spanish o sa American, gitapo ani siya ka story which is The Mass of Saint Sylvester. So with this story, Nick Joaquin uses this story to show how things were getting complicated in terms of identity and culture during that time. So next is Paz Marquez Benitez. Benitez. Ay, more na siya. So the famous literary piece that she wrote is The Dead Stars, which explores complicated relationships and how time passes. The dead stars represent dreams that can come true and disappear as society changes. So this story shows the struggle between old and new ways, giving a glimpse of Filipino life back then. So sa una nga, kung wala pa ang American, murag compare niya or gisunod niya sa isa ka story ang old ug new ways sa Filipinos katong panahon na wala pa ang American o karon o katong panahon na naana ang American. So naa aning Dead Stars kay kanang murag represent ang Dead Stars as kanang dreams nga murag sa una nga dreams sa mga Pinoy nga mahitabo ni pero wala na hitabo unya mo nang ga-change murag nag-adapt sila kinsa ning colonized dili sa Philippines. Famous authors and writers during the American period is Severino Reyes, which his famous literary piece is Walang Sugat. So Walang Sugat is a play written during the time when the Americans were in charge in the Philippines, talks about how things were back then. It tells a story set in time of the American Revolution and the Filipino-American War, showing the challenges and the sacrifices of the Filipino people. So ani siya nga piece gipakita dito or detail dito or storytelling o giunsa sa mga Pinoy nga pag-sacrifice para lang sa Philippines. So it tells how colonization affected people and their relationships. So Walang Sugat is still relevant today kay murag na pa mga university diri sa Philippines, nga kanang murag gi-play ba di theater nila ang Walang Sugat na piece ni Severino Reyes, which is it also talks about love for the country and the ongoing fight of freedom despite being under colonial rule. So next is Dean C. Worcester. His sample work is The Philippines, Past and Present. So, C. Worcester is an American zoologist, public official, and authority on the Philippines during the early American colonial period. So, kaning work, The Philippines, Past and Present, is provide insights to the Filipino society, culture, and politics during the early 20th century. So next is si James H. Blount, which is his work sample is the Blount Report. So yeah, it is all about the detailing events investigated during the Queen Niliukalani in Hawaii. But although Hawaii is not part of the Philippines, his insight into the American colonial policies and intervention in the Pacific is relevant to the understanding of the American colonialization here in the Philippines. So next is William H. Taft. So Taft is his work sample is various speeches and official documents. So Taft served as the Governor General of the Philippines in the years 1901 to 1904 and later the President of the United States in the years 1909 to 1913. So his speeches and official documents provide insights into the American colonial policies and effort to civilize and modernize the Philippines. O giunsa pag-modernize o pag-civilize ang Philippines during the American period dili gituwat ni William Taft sa iyang speeches and official document. And lastly, Mark Twain, which his work sample is The Person Sitting in the Darkness. So Twain was an American writer known for his satire and social commentary. This piece is a scathing critique of American imperialism and the atrocities committed during the Philippine-American War, highlighting the hypocrisy of claiming to bring civilization while engaging to the brutal welfare. So, kani mo ni sila tanan ang authors and writers during the American period which offer diverse perspective on American colonialism. And that's all for the famous authors and writers.
Now let's proceed to the contribution of America to the Philippines. First, we have the establishment of a democratic form of government. United States established a democratic form of government, transitioning from the previous Spanish colonial system, including Philippine Commission, Philippine Assembly, autonomy, transition to independence. Philippine Commission. In 1900s, the United States established the Philippine Commission, which initially served as the legislative branch of the colonial government. Members of the commission were appointed by the President of the United States. In Philippine Assembly, in 1907, the Philippine Assembly was established as the lower house of bicameral legislature with members elected by Filipino voters. This marked the first instance of Filipino representation in a national legislative body. For autonomy, over time, the Philippines gained increasing autonomy in its governance. In 1934, the Tidings-McDuffie Act was passed, which provided for the establishment of a Commonwealth government in the Philippines, with a president and bicameral legislature elected by Filipino citizens. Then we have transition to independence. The Commonwealth government served as a transitional period leading to full independence, which was granted on July 4, 1946, making the Philippines the first former colony in Asia to gain independence from a Western power. So that was good to hear back then. While the establishment of a democratic form of government introduced principles of representation and self-governance, it's important to recognize that the process was not without challenges and controversies. The American colonial period in the Philippines was marked by various forms of resistance and unrest, and the transition to independence was accompanied by complex geopolitical factors and negotiations. So how did it happen? The establishment of a democratic form of government in the Philippines during the American period occurred through a series of legislative and administrative actions, as well as negotiations between American authorities and Filipino leaders. Here's an overview of how it happened. Spanish-American War. The United States defeated Spain in the Spanish-American War in 1898 as part of the Treaty of Paris that ended the war. Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States. Philippine-American War. Following the Spanish-American War, Filipino revolutionary forces led by Emilio Aguinaldo fought against American forces in the Philippine-American War during 1899 to 1902. Despite Filipino efforts to establish an independent republic, the United States ultimately prevailed. So, third one, we have establishment of American colonial rule. With the defeat of Filipino forces, the United States established colonial rule over the Philippines. Initially, the Philippines was administered by the U.S. military, but civilian administration soon followed. Next, we have introduction of civil government. In 1900s, the U.S. Congress passed the Philippine Organic Act, also known as the Philippine Bill, which provided for the establishment of civil government in the Philippines. So this act created the Philippine Commission as the legislative body and introduced elements of self-governance. The fifth one, we have transition of bicameral legislature. In 1907, the Philippine Assembly was established as the lower house of bicameral legislature, marking the first instance of Filipino representation in a national legislative body. However, the Philippine Commission remained as the upper house with American appointees. Second to the last, we have autonomy and Commonwealth status. Over time, Filipinos advocated for greater autonomy and self-determination. In 1934, the U.S. Congress passed the Tidings-McDuffie Act, which provided for the establishment of a Commonwealth government in the Philippines with a president and a bicameral legislature elected by Filipino citizens. So that would be all for the contribution of the America to the Philippines. I never did that, so sorry. We have the last one, we have Road to Independence. The Commonwealth government served as a transitional period leading to full independence. So, Filipino leaders continued to work towards independence guys. Nakamit na naman ilang independence during that time. And negotiations with the United States culminated in the granting of independence on July 4, 1946. So, throughout this process, there were various challenges, including resistance from Filipino nationalist movements, negotiations over the terms of governance and autonomy, and geopolitical considerations. The establishment of a democratic form of government in the Philippines during the American period was a complex and evolving process shaped by historical circumstances and the interactions between American colonial authorities and Filipino leaders. So it was not easy. That would be all.
Now let's proceed to the second contribution of the Americans to the Philippines. So, it is the introduction of the modern infrastructure and transportation system. So, the Americans introduced new forms of transportations such as trains and automobiles, which greatly improved travel and commerce. So, they also introduced the roads and bridges, which the American administration invested in road construction to improve connectivity between towns and cities. Another is harbors and ports, which were developed and upgraded to facilitate maritime trade. And of course, the communication networks, telecommunication system was enhanced during this period. So, mga roads, bridges, mga ports, ang American kapasiugdaan na tanan. Especially sa technology, murag i-improve, gi-modernize po nila ang technology para po makuhaan ang communication sa mga tao or sa mga Filipinos. So, that's it for the modern infrastructure and transportation systems. Now, let's proceed to the implementation of educational reforms, the establishment of public schools, and the University of the Philippines. So, kani mo pinaka-daghan kayo ni sila, daghan ko tayo tag-ichika about ang implementation kay sa educational kay murag ang biggest impact of the Americans to the Philippines during their colonization is the education journey aspect, no? So, the United States government was in charge of providing education in the Philippines. So first, kanang educational reforms again, diri sa Philippines is the public system of education. So, education became a very important issue for the United States colonial government since it allowed it to spread their cultural values, particularly the English language, to the Filipino people. So, the instruction of English language, American history, leads to forming of national identity and Filipino nationalism. So, every child from age 7 was required to register in schools located in their own town or province. The students were given free school materials. So, kaya ayaw sila sa una kay ang American ay mohatag og mga material nila sa pang-eskwela. There were 3 levels of education during the American period na ato pa dun gi-practice hangtod karon. So, we have elementary, high school, or secondary or the college or tertiary level. So, religion was not part of the curriculum of the schools as it has been during the Spanish period. In some cases, those students who excelled academically were sent to the United States to continue their studies and to become experts in their desired fields or professions. So ang mga Pinoy dili majud tabulok ang mga Pinoy sa ginagawa bulok-bulok lang. Pero adto mga panahon sa mga American na adto mga mo excel academically. So adto silang mo excel, ilagpo to sila sa United States para adto mo kanang mahimong experts sa ang ilang profession. So dapat ay gitawag ng mga scholars and pensionados, which is the successful Filipino scholars were Judge Jose Abad Santos, Francisco Benitez, Dr. Honoraria Sison, and Francisco Delgado. Kani sila mga scholars sa panahon sa mga Amerikano. So next is the schools and universities that are built during the American colonization. So kinadaghanan kayo sila actually kinadaghanan kayo ng university nga build sa American diri sa Philippines. So many elementary and secondary schools from the Spanish era were recycled and new ones were opened in the cities and provinces, among which there were normal, vocational, agricultural, business schools. Among the most important colleges during the United States rule were, kani sila tanan guys. We have the Silliman University, Central Philippine University, Negros Oriental High School, St. Paul University Dumaguete, Cebu Normal School, Philamer Christian University, Iloilo Normal School in 1902, muna gitawag na karon og West Visayas State University, Zamboanga Normal Schools in 1904, Western Mindanao State University, the National University, University of Manila, Philippine Women's University, Far Eastern University. So kada sa mo taning Far Eastern University nga kuan jud kaayo kana na pagyapon diri hangtod karon. So examples of vocational schools also gi-build sa mga American diri sa atong country is the Philippine Nautical School, the Philippine School of Arts and Trades in 1901, now called the Technological University of the Philippines. The Central Luzon Agriculture School and the University of the Philippines was also founded in 1908. So, year 1908 nga gi-build ang University of the Philippines, the UP, di kan mga branch ang UP karon. Pero ang American kapasiyuda anak nakan. So, schools were also built in remote areas like Sulu, Mindanao, and the mountain provinces, were also given attention to the vocational and health practices. So next is the Thamasites, which was explained ganina po. Ang Thamasites po is the teachers during the pag-start o build sa mga sa education diri sa Philippines. So in August 1901, 600 teachers called Thamasites arrived. So 600 teachers ikan sa Amerika gidong diri sa Philippines. Their name is derived from the ship they traveled on, the USS Tomas. USS Tomas ilang gisakyan adto nga panahon pagdungog nila sa Philippines. So gitawag silang Thamasites, and they are teachers during the colonization of the American. So the original batch of Thamasites was composed of 365 males and 165 females who sailed from the United States on July 23, 1901. So dagan-dagan po sila ni Dong ang first batch. Then mo to mga Thamasites. So next is and the last part sa educational reforms na i-proposed sa American is the Monroe Commission on the Philippine Education, which was created in 1925 with the aim of reporting on the effectiveness of the education in the Philippines during the period of U.S. annexation. So that's all for the implementation of educational reforms. Now let's proceed to the fourth contribution of the American to the Philippines, which is the promotion of English as the medium of instruction. So English became the de facto medium of instruction, or the lingua franca, during the American period. So the language of new newspapers in the Philippines, like the Manila Times in 1898, Manila Daily Bulletin in 1900s, the Philippine Free Press, 1908, most of which were published by Americans and pro-American. So, napoy another newspaper which is called Sakdal, which is became the official organ of the Sakdal movement that demanded immediate independence of the Philippines from the United States. Sakdal eventually became a political party called Sakdalista Party and won national and local seats in 1934. So, the emerging of prospects for English in Philippine education are described, which serves as a medium of instruction during the time na nagsugod na ang education diri sa Philippines. It is the language of the academy and therefore it is the ability to reach a great number of people. As it used in school, English is helping mold the minds of children who are to become the future of the Philippines. So kaning mga newspaper, mga journalism nila sa una, ang ila jud gigamit nga language is English. So kaning Sakdal English gyapon. So English jud nilang gigamit as a mode of instruction during that era. So here, the English language has enjoyed a privileged status in the Philippine formal education since U.S. President McKinley declared it the medium of instruction of the Philippines public education system 1900. Since na-mention ganina nga, ang American kay murag giput standard nila ang education pareha sa ilang education dito sa US. So, gibutang na po nila sa Philippines nga ang medium of instruction jud is ilang language which is English. So, also may advantages adding English as a medium of instruction. First is in the aspect of communication. So English has become a global language, and by adopting it as a medium of instruction, Filipinos were able to communicate effectively with English-speaking countries. These open up opportunities for international trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. Second is the access to global knowledge. So English is the primary language of many scientific, academic, and technological advancements. By promoting English as the medium of instruction, Filipinos gain access to a vast amount of global knowledge and research, enabling them to stay updated with the latest developments of the Philippines. Next is the educational opportunities. So English proficiency has become a requirement for higher education and professional advancement. By teaching in English, the American period facilitated educational opportunities for Filipinos, allowing them to pursue further studies and careers both locally and internationally. So through English, daghang opportunities kung kaybaw ka ng English, kaybaw ka mo istorya English, daghang educational opportunities, especially nga before inside mo excel academically doon sa US para dito mo may expert sa ilang profession. Then next is the job market advantage, which is by adopting English as the medium of instruction again, Filipinos were better equipped to compete for job opportunities like mutupong na sa another nga mga countries nga kabay mo speak of English kaybaw sa language nga English mutupong na nila we are very competitive na tungod sa promotion of English sa mga American diri sa Philippines. So lastly, the cultural and intellectual enrichment. So English is not only a language, it is also a carrier of culture and ideas. By promoting English, the American period introduced Filipinos to a broader range of literature, art, and intellectual discourse around the world. This exposure enriched the cultural and intellectual landscape of the Philippines. And that's all for the promotion of English as the medium of instruction.
And now to the final and the last contribution of America to the Philippines, we have development of the Philippine economy through investments in agriculture. So we all know that Philippines is known to be an exporting country of agricultural resources. According to the Department of Health in 2011, the agricultural sector grew by just 2% after recovering from the drought in 2010. Within this growth, the manifestation of development are the improved
fertilization, rehabilitation of irrigations, the use of quality seeds, and etc. So this development in agriculture industry had contributed in the Philippine economy. The following show this. So first we have, let's read this first. The shift of manual farmers to technological farmers with the use of machineries and equipment. The second one, we have agribusiness provides opportunities to venture and earn a living. Farming provides rural employment and reduces unemployment in the country and rural development. So the first one, we have the program under Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, or RCEF. So in which they tend to provide rice farmers with machinery and equipment. With this, the production of rice crops would be faster and would be bigger in amount but lesser capital, since only a few workers would already be machineries and equipment to do the labor quickly. Thus, rice farmers can be more productive and earn more. So, males silang hago pero mas dako po ilang ma-earn na income, which is more productive. Second, we have agribusiness opportunities. Due to farming, it provides plenty of business opportunities, thus the existence of agripreneurs. The government also launched several agripreneurship loans that can support Filipinos to start their own agribusiness. So it serves as an opportunity, but also for those who are interested to agribusiness. Third, we have improving rural employment. So agriculture had also offered various ways for countryside folks to have their jobs. In fact, the Philippine Statistics Authority found that agricultural employment accounts for 24.3% of the total employment in the country in 2018. So therefore, unemployment is reduced in the country through the help of the agricultural industry. Fourth, we have rural development. As of 2018, there's an estimate of 24.5% of poverty incidence in rural areas. So why? Since agricultural activity and entrepreneurship is the main activity in the countryside, investing in this sector can reduce poverty and boost local developments such as the Sustainable Sagada, wherein online farmers had existed to sell their products and reach their customers throughout the country. So through online shop. So these are just examples of the contribution of the agricultural industry in the development of the Philippine economy. So in conclusion, the American period in the Philippines spanning from 1898 to 1946 left a lasting impact on the nation's development. So nakatabang jud ni siya. The introduction of modern infrastructure and transportation systems played a crucial role in connecting different regions and fostering economic activities. So we all know that transportation serves as an instrument for smooth connection between different regions, which fosters economic activity. So the establishment of communication networks, economy, education, and making literary pieces are the American contribution to the Philippines. The American period marked a complex chapter, so complex kaayo siya in Philippine history. So with a legacy that includes both positive contributions to infrastructure development and the imposition of colonial structures that shape the country's trajectory.
And that will be all for the American period.
I hope that you learned something from our discussion.
Thank you and God bless.